Hi, I'm Nancy Marshall. I'm the author of a book called A Rattler's Tale. It's a series of vignettes about a time when my husband and I and our children kept going to our cabin in the Prescott National Forest. And it's a series of true stories about when the wild animals encountered the humans. The narrator of all these stories is the Arizona black rattlesnake. You ready for the first one? This one is called Stealing the Garbage. Here in the forest, we all try to get along. We practice what you might call animal etiquette. I admit there is that business of predator eat prey, but for the most part, we give each other space and respect each other's territory. We abide by the rules that seem to have been laid out by some great creator spirit who wants us all to live in balance in the forest. The humans come here just some of the time. It is not their home, and we're talking deep in the national forest. So there's not likely to be a plow or a backhoe destroying our habitat, ripping down trees for yet another human takeover. So these particular humans seem, on the surface of it all, not too destructive. They've put up signs around the edge of their little slice of paradise that say, "Wilderness Stronghold." The sign, a yellow triangle, displays a spruce tree, a male deer, and a hawk, since it is their property, in human terms. Not too many other humans trespass. I remind you, it is not their property. It is not even the property of the National Forest Service. It is ours. But I digress. These humans have some peculiar habits. One rather smelly habit is putting out the bag of leftovers. Leftovers? We are so much more careful not to generate waste products. Think about it. When have you seen a forest that is, one, not overrun by humans, cluttered up with tin cans, broken beer bottles, and plastic bags snagged in the locust bushes? Never. Of course not. We clean up nice. And if the first round of scavengers doesn't accomplish the task, the tiny detrivores do. Termites are part of God's important plan. Wood chips to wood chips. However, the lure of human-generated garbage can cause some close encounters. Mr. and Mrs. Human's tool shed is just a short walk from their cabin. The Mrs. usually stores the leftovers in a bag in the shed so it won't stink up the cabin. I get that. Very few of us make it smelly where we live. Mice are something of the exception. On this particular summer day, the mom had left last night's dinner and this morning's breakfast trash in the shed. Fine and good. But after breakfast, she forgets to close the door to that shed. And while humans don't appear to have a keen sense of either sight, compared to a hawk, or smell, compared to a bear, a coyote, and a skunk, most of us do have a keen sense of sight and smell. It's how we find lunch. A flat ledge juts out from my stone wall where a serpent can sunbathe. From where I lay curled up, I can see both the back door to the cabin and the only door to the shed. On this sunny afternoon, the shed door is wide open. Since it's a warm, sunny day, the trash in the shed picks a pungent odor. Suddenly, the lady skunk wanders into view, her nose in the air. Here in the forest, we know her as Rose. She's caught the scent all right, and she's heading just where she really oughtn't to head, the shed. But in the open door she goes. I feel the vibrations as she rustles for grub, pawing that bag of leftovers. It has to be just about as tall as she is, because I catch a glimpse of her on her hind legs, front paws over the edge of the bag. Then I see her knock it over and grab a lettuce leaf from the stuff strewn on the floor. Unfortunately, just at that moment, Mrs. Human decides to take some scrapings from lunch out to the trash bag. She's just minding her own business, which is not a good idea in the forest, where you never know who you might encounter. Into the shed saunters Mrs. Human with a plate of scraps. It's shady in the shed, and she has to adjust her eyesight to the darkness. It takes a second, and then I hear the gasp. She has suddenly encountered Rose, who sports a bountiful mouthful of greens dangling from her jaws. Just so you understand the dynamics, please remember that even though it is our forest, and you humans are the invaders, we know quite well that to go into a human-made structure is a fool's errand. It's dangerous, a no-no. And humans seem to be acutely aware of a skunk's reputation. Rose is quite conscious that she has committed a trespass. Mrs. Human is rightly terrified. Both stare at each other, frozen with fear. Will Mrs. Human bring the plate down on the skunk's head? Will Rose emit her special skunk sprinkle against human aggression? As it turns out, both have good sense. Both realize that this does not have to be a lose. Mrs. Human knows she has entered the shed by surprise. Rose knows that she has trespassed. Mrs. Human steps back, a gesture of deference. Rose scoots out of the shed, declining to spray, a courtesy if ever there was one, and she runs down the hill. This story would have a happy enough ending if it ends just like that. There's a short last chapter. Mrs. Human decides that just a few leftovers might be placed strategically down the hill by the creek in case another mother seeks supper for her children. It's a common, well-intentioned human mistake. We wild critters are generally better off not getting used to human handouts. Well, I enjoyed reading this story to you, and I want to remind you that the narrator is the Arizona black rattlesnake, who is a prime resident in the Prescott National Forest. This is a series of stories in which each animal behaves in its true fashion, and they do, in one way or another, encounter humans. We can both have fun and learn from these animals, as we read each story about the skunk, the great-tailed grackle, the jackrabbit, the black bear, the human quarter horse. What is he doing lost in the national forest? The raccoon, the field mice, the javelina, the white-tailed deer, and Ramona ringtail, the state mammal. Come to Brightside Bookstore, buy the book, and enjoy all the stories and learn more about the way animals really behave in the national forest. Thanks.